Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I have a super exciting interview because we have Lory and we have Patrick here. They're actually son and mother, mother and son. So I'm super excited to have them on here because so many times I think parents are really excited about the tech field and the benefits that come with it, the flexibility, and they want to be able to share that with their kid. And we have Lory here to be able to talk about how she did that. And then we have Patrick here to be able to share his side as why he ultimately decided to come into the tech field. So with that being said, I would love for you guys to be able to just talk about your journey and really share what you've enjoyed about it so far. So Lory, could you just tell us a little bit about you? I know a lot of the audience probably already knows you, but would love to hear a little bit more.
So during the pandemic, I quit nursing, as most of my connections would know, and I used the 5-day challenge by Talent Stacker / Choose FI, and that's how I got introduced to Salesforce as a viable option when leaving my nursing career. And when I got in there, and I really said to myself, you got to make this work because you invested that much money. And that was also the reason I invested that much money, is because I wanted to be focused on it and not just be like, Trailhead is free, but Talent Stacker is not. But that played a big role for me to actually focus on it and really turn my attention into this career pivot, not just something I took lightly. And when I was getting deeper and deeper into the Trailhead, I actually was really enjoying it, the mental stimulation. And I knew that if I was enjoying it, my sons would enjoy it. So I also tried to get them into it almost at the same time as I was starting, because I had this selfishness, if you would call it a selfishness, because I knew that if they hopped onto it at the same time that I did, then we would be learning together. We can learn from each other, share things with each other, and try to figure things out rather than wait for someone to answer my question online. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But I wasn't getting much luck during that time. And so during the period after I joined, after I got into Salesforce, to the period that Patrick actually got into it, I kept sending them screenshots of people who made the pivot, especially after I found the Healthcare Heroes Force group. That I met a lot of healthcare workers. And so Patrick is a healthcare worker, but he used to also be a teacher. Before he became a PTA, he did substitute teaching. So both my sons were teachers. My younger one is still a teacher. And in Talent Stacker, there are also teachers. So both teachers, healthcare workers, whenever they would post something about their pivot, their job landed, and they're posting the reasons why they made the switch and the advantages that they're now seeing now that they've landed their jobs. So I would post screenshots of it on their I would send it via chat, So,
yeah.
And there was a recent one that I sent to Patrick right before he joined, and this was with someone who was doing business analysis. So she was a business analyst for Deloitte for a year already, and in that post she mentioned about how the jump in her salary also not enabled her more time for other things, and also she was able to buy a house. And I think there was also a rental or something. So Choose FI, I don't know if you're familiar with Choose FI.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of Talent Stackers who got into the program because we heard Bradley talk first in the Choosify podcast. So that person who bought a house, and this is within 1 year, bought a house, had a rental, basically improved her lifestyle, their family's lifestyle. That was all in 1 year.
Wow.
And she wasn't certified yet at the time that she posted that.
Oh, wow. That's very impressive. That's incredibly impressive. That's great for the viewers that are listening. You know, sometimes I think that like we have to like be in a certain position within Salesforce, and that just goes to show that like it does help you obviously to get certified, but just having like that story for people to look at is very inspirational. And Patrick, to that point, I think our generation especially, it's so hard. Like we were just talking offline, it's so hard to buy a house. It's like rent it's increasing. So like, how do you save to buy a house? How do you have enough time? How do you take off time? You know, when my husband was transitioning out, we were moving from one city over to another city, and it was very hard to just take off time. Very expensive. So I think that's a huge reason why a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, are like transferring over from the tech industry. So Patrick, my question goes to you now, like since your mom was sending you all of those screenshots, which I think is really cool, what kind of got your interest? Like how long did it take? What was kind of like the point where you were like, okay, I want to do this. I want to move forward.
Well, really what convinced me was really not until the point where she landed her job, truth be told. So, I've always been very skeptical, especially with the internet. You know, that's just how we grew up with, you know, with the internet and just being skeptical about it. So when she first kind of started mentioning this, I genuinely believed it was some form of MLM, you know, multi-level marketing type of deal. So, but you know, it also didn't sound exactly like an multi-level marketing scheme. So, at the same time, I was quietly rooting for her, but I was also hoping that it would genuinely work out for her because, you know, she just the way that healthcare workers were treated, especially during the pandemic, just, it really is an unfortunate situation, and I'm glad that she was able to get out of it. I just had hoped that she would be able to find something, and she did. And that was really the point which it really just convinced me that it really worked, because I did hear the episode with Bradley Rice as well. I love listening to Choosify. But in some form, I feel like Brad and Jonathan, the podcast hosts for Choosify, I feel like, and even Bradley Rice, even though I've connected with him at this point, I feel like in a sense, they're kind of like in a pedestal where if it doesn't feel like they're real people, obviously, but it doesn't feel like they're real people. But the fact that my mom, you know, did it, that I was just like, okay, it's got to be real. So at that point, that's pretty much where I was convinced. So it's been quite a timeline since.
Yeah, with that, I think it's really inspirational because like at the end of the day, you were rooting for your mom. Like it's exactly like you said, like it was very hard for healthcare workers, and to hear your support for your mom and like wanting something different for her, but then also at the same time, once your mom found this, she also wanted the same thing for you. So it's like you both are equally supporting each other on the opposite side. So can you tell me like what has been the best part of like working together? What has been the best part? Because I know you all go out. Lory, you post pictures of just going out with each other and having like Salesforce talk times and stuff like that. Has it brought your bond together more? Have you been able to talk about different things? Like just tell me how the vibe has been between you guys since like joining the same place.
Well, let me just say that before Salesforce, Patrick and I, we have a pretty good bond.
Yeah.
But when I was bombarding my sons and even their girlfriends with Salesforce things, like you should consider this. So I would post links and videos and whatnot every now and then, and I'd be like, there was that fear that they might alienate me because I'm essentially spamming their messages with Salesforce stuff. But I just wanted to let them know that, okay, this alternative exists if you find yourself needing to get out of where you are right now. This is a good option, and that's basically the essence of my messages. But I was also afraid that, like I said, I might alienate them, but at the same time, I did not want them to think that I'm not serious about this. So finally that I got the job, they knew that this was something real, very real, and very viable.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if I, at age 52, did it with no tech background, they would be able to do the same thing. They're more tech. I don't know. I think they're more tech inclined than me. So now that Patrick is in this, no more of that sense of I'm alienating them. So the bond really has more strengthened because of this, I think.
I will say before we completely dropped that previous question. First and foremost, I did want to state my mom was indeed very passionate about our chats, and second, um, in terms of the bond part, while there were times where I was interested in what my mom did, and what all the projects that she'd been working on, but it was the language that was largely that went from one ear right out the other. So I would often get lost after a while of trying to understand it all. But with this, once I started kind of working with it now, and the fact that we're kind of doing our little Sunday studies there, the language is definitely clicking a lot more for me specifically, so that when my mom's just trying to explain a new thing that she's doing, it isn't necessarily just mumbo jumbo to me anymore.
And I think that's a really good point that you make, because I think a lot of people who come into Salesforce, I speak to a lot of people who retire from the military, and that might mean like they're in their late 40s, early 50s, or just like working moms, and just so many people that pivot into Salesforce. I think they have that fear. They're like, well, does my skills apply? Does my years of working at an office apply to what I could do in tech? And I think not only for this episode, of course, to show you and Patrick's relationship, but Lory, I think like I always bring you up to my mother-in-law. You know, she says the same thing. She's tired of working at the office, and I think that was a common feeling that a lot of people brought from the pandemic, and they genuinely want to make that change. So not only are you both an inspiration, but Patrick, your mom is like your mom is an inspiration to a lot of people. So with that being said, kind of in a way, my husband and I both are in Salesforce too, and like he has the skills in automations, like that's his thing, and I have like more of like that communication style, obviously from this like podcast and then YouTube videos. Do you all ever like kind of like you were talking about earlier, go to each other and be like, hey Patrick, do you know how to do this? Or hey mom, do you know how to do this? Do you guys ever like talk to each other about like Salesforce-y stuff? Yeah. The Sunday post pictures, they're so inspirational. Just seeing you guys sitting down and like talking about things. I think that pictures, you know, of course videos, they say more than 1,000 words, so that's perfect. Okay, so Patrick, when your mom was texting you and sending you messages, I love that. But if you were talking to the audience right now and a parent's listening and they really want to be able to talk to their kid about coming into tech, how would you advise them to approach that conversation?
Honestly, contrary to my mom's approach, I would keep it short and sweet. Keep it short and sweet, because especially with the younger generation, even like it eased into our generation, but mostly the younger one, they like things, you know, TikTok being a big deal now. It's nice and sweet. You get the information right away. So really
Mhm.
just make use of that short attention span, because at a certain point you just lose them. So and
Yeah.
just kind of doing like, instead of a long rant, kind of maybe bite-sized pieces, and just kind of keep on, just like, I guess at this point is where my mom kind of um worked out, because she was she was consistent about it. She
Yeah.
would talk about all the different healthcare workers that had successfully transitioned, and everything. So just those short and sweet moments are really what would be most impactful. Oh, I actually, and also, I know Trailhead is free, but the
Yeah.
gamification of that was huge, specifically for me,
Mhm.
because I think that the fact that that's a lot more engaging for the learner will definitely,
Yeah.
especially for the younger generation, will kind of trick them into learning.
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's yeah, like when it comes to Trailhead, I think it really ignites the competitive side in people. So, Lory, my question goes to you now. For parents that are listening, from a parent's perspective, how would you tell a parent to kind of talk to their kid and say, like, hey, this is a great approach to helping them at least look into Salesforce or into tech?
The most impact would be if the children are now getting into a financial bind.
Mm.
They need to move out, they need to buy a car, and what they're earning currently is not really working.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's gonna make the most impact, especially if, okay, like I just made the transition and this is my entry level pay.
Yeah, it's hard.
How would you like this?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a big difference. Even in Patrick's current job, it's quite a big difference. So,
Mm-hmm.
and by the time, if he starts now, by the time, after about 2 or 3 years, it's gonna be in the 6-digit number per year, right? And I've been telling Patrick, Salesforce is different. One of the things that are different with Salesforce compared to other professions is that the pay rate increase is so much bigger, and the rate at which you increase your pay is also exponentially faster, because 3 months, 6 months of experience, that counts a lot already. Job hopping is pretty much accepted.
Yeah.
And right now, speaking for the current times, the demand for talent is such that there is a talent war amongst companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, to the point, I think it is that bad, to the point that Salesforce is having more and more partners come up with training programs.
Mm-hmm.
And there are training programs that actually pay the talent a certain amount every month, or even as a full-time employee, So I've seen companies offering per hour rate with no benefits to offering a full-time employment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge for someone with no prior experience to be offered that. And in my company, I had no prior Salesforce experience other than my mini projects, and yet my pay rate in my full-time employment, it's something that was too impactful, not only to my sons but also to my husband, who also thought that it was an MLM. now even my husband envies me.
Wow. So I have my last question for you, and it's going to be fun. Okay. So maybe just like, what are the best parts about working together? What has been one of the funnest times y'all had, best times, memorable times, anything that kind of comes to mind?
Well, we actually just did 2 Sundays, Salesforce Sundays, to this time, and to me, it's just the chance to be doing the studying with him in person. in a cafe trying whatever food we're interested. We're foodies, so we love trying new food. So so that to me is the best. And of course, we catch up before we actually dive into the study. We try to catch up with each other's lives. That's the best part for me.
That sounds amazing.
What about you, Patrick?
Well, to kind of piggyback off of that, really, it's just so it is and it isn't related to Salesforce, but it kind of brings my mom and I together because we're both kind of her and my brother and I are the kind of the adventurous ones in terms of trying out foods. So whenever we do the studies, we'd want to try every single thing in the menu. So we'd each get different things, and that while we're studying, we just try every single one that we were curious about. And that kind of, I don't get that experience as much as because not everybody's willing to try some weird looking food. So it's that experience in itself, I feel like it's worth just being able to have that kind of special bond with being a study buddies beyond just mom and son. But
foodies for the win.
Yeah.
Especially over coffee.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, this was perfect, y'all. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to the audience. Like we said at the beginning of the video, I think like a lot of parents, and even moving forward for generations, Patrick, probably like you and I, when we have kids or if we decide to have kids in the future, like it's a good pivot way to showcase stories and examples and be like an inspiration, or just have ways to bond, different ways to bond with people in general. So I really wanted to say thank you, Lory, for you're an inspiration to a lot of people. You're an inspiration to me. So thank you so much for coming on. And Patrick, thank you so much for being here as well, you guys.
Thank you so
really
much for
appreciate it.
inviting us for this. It's really a pleasure. And it's an honor.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It's a really cool experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll say bye to the audience, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye. See ya.